Welcome to the Coach Rob Show.
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
He's been a coach and a dad for 3 decades.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
Looking at life through the lens of faith, family, and football.
The hardness of life is a reminder, and so you need the preaching of the gospel as a reminder.
Here's Coach Drew Robison.
Hello, and welcome to the Coach Rob Show. Today is Thursday, February the 12th. We are going to look at life through the lens of faith, family, and football. And today, we are going to actually wrap up the football season as we had the Super Bowl last weekend. We wrapped up a lot of interesting storylines that happened this year in football season, but it is a sad time of the year. It's like when Christmas is over and, you've opened all the gifts as a little kid and you had the fun Christmas morning and then you're kind of just putting everything away. You have a little bit of time because you've got a few days before you have to go back to school and you can play with your new toys and your new video games and whatever, put on your cool new basketball shoes or whatever you might have gotten. But it kind of wears off. So we're later in the week after the Super Bowl, and it is sad that the season is over. Man, what an interesting year we had with college football in Indiana beating Miami in the national championship. We had kind of a Super Bowl that was not really predicted. We had the New England Patriots and a young quarterback, Drake May. Second-year coach Mike Vrabel, very storied, linebacker from the dynasty years of the Patriots, coaching the Patriots now. And then the Seattle Seahawks with Sam Darnold, unbelievable story of just perseverance and ability to believe in himself and continue to be ready to play at a high level. And his last 2 seasons with the Vikings, and then the Vikings letting him go, and then the season he had with Seattle with all of the predictors that, Geno Smith was the guy and the Seahawks were making a mistake. And, well, look what Geno Smith did in Vegas, and look what Sam Darnold did in Seattle. So, I was a Geno Smith fan too, but man, he didn't do what Sam Darnold did. So the Seahawks end up winning the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was certainly not an offensive showdown. It wasn't probably as exciting because of the lack of offense, or I should say because of the really good defensive play that we've come to know that, defenses do well to win Super Bowls, but it's not that often. But, occasionally every few years we have these Super Bowl champion teams that actually don't have much of an offense relative to the defense, but that the offense just sort of gets it done. Seattle, they kind of got it done. They didn't do anything great offensively, but, you kind of felt that way with the Trent Dilfer Ravens. And I don't really believe you can put the Brad Johnson Bucks into that because the Brad Johnson Bucks with John Gruden as the first-year Bucks coach in 2002, they were actually a pretty good offense. They did some good things, but the defense was unbelievable and certainly led the team with the Bucks. The Seahawks was led by their defense. They were led by their defense when they won it with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. The Legion of Boom with Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and those guys. So, defenses tend to win championships. That's why the saying is true. Offenses have to bring something to the table. Drake May just had no answer for the Seahawks defense. The defense of Seattle was able to force turnovers, particularly in the second half, and just proved to be too much. Now, this week, Alex Deitz and I on the Take It to the House podcast will dive into the nuts and bolts of the Super Bowl and kind of wrap up the football season. Take It to the House is going to have a few weeks off before we start talking about basketball. We will get into the conference championship tournaments of college basketball. We will cover in detail the NCAA tournament. And then after that, we will talk about the NBA playoffs as they will be underway as we get sort of in the middle of April, May, and June. And then we'll take a few weeks off before we start football right back up again in August. So anyway, it's kind of, with Take It to the House, we've sort of divided it in the year into about 26 weeks of football and then a break, and about 16 weeks of basketball and then another little break. But the Coach Rob Show is going to be here every week, and we're going to get into some news stories. First of all, I would like to say this news story about Nancy Guthrie is very sad, and I don't think anybody would want to say anything different other than it's a very sad story. Although we are now getting into, I think we're in day 12 or 13. We're almost at 2 weeks where this 84-year-old woman has been missing. They have just covered this story as much as you possibly can. But I actually looked yesterday over about, 10 different shows and just kind of looked all over for updates to this story. And all we really had to talk about yesterday was a black glove. And I know the day before that, we talked about this driver that was questioned, and then he did an interview. The day before, or maybe yesterday as well, we had this new video footage, or a couple days ago, this new video footage from the front porch. So we actually got to look at this guy with a ski mask and the gloves and the jacket and everything. So it just seems to me, and I haven't really been much of a true crime fan compared to other people, because I feel like so many of these true crime shows and true crime podcasts are just repetitive, kind of like the coverage on this Nancy Guthrie story. It's just been repetitive, and there's been nothing new to talk about. And so they've just been beating a dead horse, pardon the expression, but they've been beating a dead horse with no new information. I want to know if there's something new. I want to know if they've got a suspect. And I understand with an investigation, you can't publicize everything. Like we have 3 people on a list, or you can't reveal everything because you're still trying to play this cat and mouse game, and this guy is trying not to get caught. You would think, based on what has happened so far, that Nancy Guthrie is still alive, because you would think this guy is trying to get some money. And if Nancy Guthrie were dead, there would be no opportunity for money, unless perhaps this person is just trying to get publicity. But the other part of it that seems a little bit unhopeful is the more time that goes by, as well as the fact that this woman, this prisoner of kidnapping, is 84 years old. It just makes me believe that it is likely that she is not alive, and that is, the family is hopeful, and I would be hopeful as well. But this is a type of story that happens a lot, and a lot more than just this case. And this case is high profile because Savannah Guthrie is on the Today Show. So anyway, I'm not suggesting that because Savannah Guthrie is on the Today Show, this is a less important story, but that is why it's a big story. But I guess it's a good thing that we're paying attention and that it is a story, because it is causing most people to sort of humanize this idea of criminal activity and of kidnapping. And, this is a good example of, criminals are bad and victims of crime are real victims. And it seems like we live in a world now where everybody wants to be a victim. Everybody wants to claim that they're a victim because of their identity. And that's just kind of garbage, in my opinion. So this is a story of a true victim with a true criminal, a true perpetrator, instead of all these fake, victims, fake oppression stuff that we're dealing with identity politics. So in a way, I think it's a healthy story, although it's a very sad story. And I hope that she's okay, but we'll see what happens in the news and see if they can get their mom back. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings can get their mom back. So we'll see. We will be right back. We've got more to talk about. We're going to dive into the halftime show from the Super Bowl, talk about that a little bit, and a couple other things. We'll be right back on the Coach Rob Show.
Can you feel the love that's in my heart? Can you see the flame we got to start? Burning like a beacon in the...
The Coach Rob Show is a part of the Louisiana Podcast Network and is produced from the Call and Audible Studios in Franklin, Tennessee. Find the video show on the Drew Robison channel on YouTube and on the audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Hey, welcome back to the Coach Rob Show. We are on a week after the Super Bowl, and there was a lot of discussion this past week about the halftime show. Bad Bunny was the halftime show. It seems like the timing of the scheduling of this is a little bit interesting. Number one, it's interesting because Bad Bunny did win something. I don't know what he won, but maybe Album of the Year at the Grammys. That's a big deal, although a lot of people in Middle America are sick of the Grammys as well, particularly the sort of virtue signaling show that we had from Billie Eilish and Bad Bunny at the Grammys talking about ICE and immigration. And I think most of America kind of views Hollywood and the music industry as largely, if not mostly, a joke when it comes to ideas about society, policy, about politics, and just general intelligent opinions about the world. I think most of America understands those things better than the microcosm or the bubble of Hollywood and the recording industry. However, it is important to note that the NFL is trying to globalize its brand. There is no question about that. I do find it interesting, though, that in this effort to globalize the brand from a business standpoint, why target Puerto Rico? Why target the Hispanic community, particularly at this time and particularly during the greatest event in American sports, which is arguably the greatest event of the year in American culture. And so it was interesting timing, particularly with all of the the thing with the Grammys didn't happen before Bad Bunny was scheduled for the Super Bowl, but the timing with ICE, the timing of this controversy, and we're going to get into this a little bit later as to why ICE and why immigration is a big story. I think that's an interesting thing. Why is it controversial? We'll get into that a little bit later, but the timing of all of that with a halftime show that is not in English, it's all in Spanish. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with Spanish. And frankly, I don't know. I'm out of the demographic. I am not a Bad Bunny fan. I'm not a Bad Bunny hater. I don't know much about Bad Bunny, but I just think his name is dumb. But that's because I'm a 55-year-old dude who grew up in the 80s. So you know what? It's okay. It doesn't matter that I think his name is dumb. I watched about the first 2 minutes of the halftime show, and I thought it was interesting. I actually like a lot of that sort of Hispanic, Latin kind of dance beat music. I think it's kind of cool. I like a lot of Brazilian stuff. I like a lot of, again, showing my age, but I like a lot of like Miami Sound Machine, Gloria Estefan. I have like 2 Gloria Estefan CDs. I don't have them on CD anymore, but I've got them on my Spotify list of her albums that are in Spanish because I think they're great. And I think she's great. But anyway, all that is to say, I don't have any bone to pick with Bad Bunny, but I think the timing of this was interesting. I think that a lot of times this is sort of an example of when the right wing folks can tend to sometimes freak out, and I'm just not somebody who likes the freak out stuff. I don't like the scream of I'm offended. I just don't like that. I don't think that people who are constantly screaming, I'm offended by that, I'm offended by that. You know what? Just turn the channel off. Turn it on something different. If you don't like it, pick another option. Don't cry about it and whine about it. Well, they shouldn't do that. Well, you know what? Maybe they shouldn't. But it's, you know what? It's Roger Goodell's the commissioner. NBC did the Super Bowl. They can do what they want. And guess what? TPUSA can do what they want too. And if they want to do something with Kid Rock, and they ended up, I think, with over 10 million viewers, and actually, ironically, on Apple Music, Kid Rock and I think one other artist that was on the Kid Rock TPUSA halftime deal has, you know, top-ranked songs on Apple Music this week after the Super Bowl, even more than the Bad Bunny stuff. So I'm all for options. I think it's fine. I don't want to spend any time, you know, trying to, you know, make this Bad Bunny thing into something more than it is. You know, this whole narrative, and it could be a little bit, there's maybe a little bit of truth to it, that, you know, I just don't want to get too wrapped up in this narrative of, oh, you know, this is what's coming. You know, the left is telling you that, you know, the English-speaking America is done, and this is over. And you know what? I'm not ready to say that. I think there are too many English-speaking Americans, just like I don't think that socialism is taking our country over, even though I think that socialism is becoming intriguing to some younger people, and that's sad and unfortunate. But you know what? I think a lot of this garbage is not going to be able to sustain itself on the merits of the principles that it stands for. So, you know what? This whole idea of Hispanic culture is going to take over our country, I'm not worried about that. I think the Hispanic culture is fine. I like the Hispanic culture. I can say that if I were on the Roger Goodell Super Bowl committee, I probably would have said that this is not the best act, completely in Spanish, for the Super Bowl. But if I'm just a consumer, which is what I am, I'm happy to let people know they can choose to watch other things. I talked to my brother before the Super Bowl. He does a Super Bowl party every year, and he lives in South Carolina. He said he was just pulling up like Super Bowl halftimes from like the last 25 years on YouTube, and he was going to show some of that stuff. Well, that's great too. Why don't you do that? You don't have to sit there and watch something that just makes you mad so that you can complain about it. And in some ways, that's kind of what social media has turned into. So I'm not going to condemn Bad Bunny. I'm not going to condemn the NFL over this. I'm glad people had the TPUSA option. I'm happy that Kid Rock had some success with his halftime show as well. And I hope that Bad Bunny can appreciate his American citizenship and can become an American patriot if he's not already. I hope he appreciates all the money that he is making because of the economy of the USA. And I'm sure he's doing very well because of American capitalism. Okay, enough about that. We're going to move on, but we are going to still talk about the American economy because we've had some reports come out about the added jobs in January, the growth, particularly in construction jobs. Unemployment continues to be down, and the Dow is booming, continuing to boom. So anyway, there's some issues, particularly about the economy, that are interesting as we're starting to get into midterm season. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back on the Coach Rob Show.
Be sure to join Coach Rob along with Alex Deitz each week on the Take It to the House podcast, posted each week on the Drew Robison YouTube channel.
All right, welcome back. We're in our next segment. We're talking about the economy now, and it's kind of looking into the 2026 midterms and some of the things that Trump is doing to sort of help out the Republicans as we get into the midterms. You know, as most people know, when a president wins a re-election, and I know this is not a re-election, but it's a second term for Trump after the Biden 4 years. And so after that happens, usually the midterm elections 2 years after the presidential election year will swing the other way. I think about 90% of the time it will swing the other way, which means that history would say Democrats are going to win back the House or the Senate or both in the 2026 midterms. Well, what's really interesting is the way Trump was elected in 2024 was largely the result of a very, very strong base that he has, but it was also largely, and maybe the most deciding factor in his reelection or his election again, is the fact that the Democrats completely screwed up in what they were doing with Biden, what they did with Harris, and what they tried to throw together in terms of a campaign, for the opposition to Trump. So I think a lot of people who don't particularly love Trump, maybe they don't love Trump personally, or maybe they're not even fiscally conservative people, but they just thought that the Democrats were such a mess that they felt like they had to vote for Trump. I know in my earlier years, I voted for Bob Dole. I voted for Mitt Romney. I voted for a lot of guys. The first time I voted when I was 18 years old, I voted for George H.W. Bush over Michael Dukakis. I have almost always voted for Republicans, and many, many times when I voted for some of these Republican candidates, I was not impressed. I did not like the Republican candidates, but it was just such an obvious choice to pick the winning side philosophically that's what determined my vote. And so I think a lot of people this time who may not love Donald Trump, they voted for Trump because of the mess that the Democrats made of the campaign. Now, what has continued since his going back into office is that he's been keeping his promises. He has been fulfilling exactly what he campaigned on in terms of closing the border, in terms of creating selective and limited tariffs, not a ton of reckless tariffs, but limited and selective tariffs that has gotten a lot of manufacturing geared back toward the United States, which that takes a long time to sort of see that fruition in the economy. But he's also gotten, I can't remember the number, I want to say it's 20 trillion, something like $20 trillion of foreign investment in the United States. And that's because of this encouragement of the manufacturing to go back to the United States. Now, one of the big numbers that just came out this week was 130,000 added jobs in January, and even on CNN and MSNBC, or NBC Now, I think is what they call it, they are admitting that these are great numbers for the American economy. Now, 50,000 in the Dow is a continued record-setting number. And the Dow, I don't think is by itself necessarily a great sign that the economy is turned around. But what is happening is the things that matter in terms of, we heard about the price of eggs for a while. We've heard about the price of gas, which is a huge impact on the price of everything else because of shipping, because inflation is down. And then the fact that we have major cities with crime down and with the border closed, we now have a lot of cleanup that's going on when it comes to people traveling, people investing in the big cities, as well as a lot of big cities are no longer being drained, even though some mayors are continuing to insist upon this. California is insisting upon this as well. But for the most part, a lot of big cities have had relief, and the country as a whole has had the relief of not being drained of resources because of being sanctuary cities and because of spending money that should be used to help the citizens of those cities. It's no longer being used to house and to provide health care for illegal immigrants. And so that is a positive thing. That was a big part of the Trump campaign, and that is what he is following through on. So what is fascinating is that the Democrat side right now, from a philosophical standpoint, has really only one thing, and they haven't wavered on this, which is how they lost, but it's also what they have chosen to not change their messaging on, which is everything Trump does is bad. Everything Trump does is bad. And what's fascinating about that is that doesn't work with anybody. When you really are interested in the truth, that just doesn't work with anybody. If you just say everything Joe Biden does is bad, well, that doesn't really work unless you start breaking down, well, let's look at what Biden did here, and maybe that was bad. Maybe Trump did this, and that was bad. And then people get into the details of what's going on with Trump, and a lot of times people, and I'll come back to this point later as well, but this idea that we're always going to pick a side based on the messenger. We're going to pick a side based on whoever the talking head is on a certain point, as opposed to let's actually look at the merits of the argument. Let's forget who it is and what team that person is on and just agree or disagree based on, are you a Crip or are you a Blood? It's like we've become gangs in terms of the online cesspool of arguments. And really what is makes a lot more sense is, well, let's look at the merits of the argument. If this point makes sense, then let's agree with it. And not be afraid to. If a certain point doesn't make sense, we'll disagree with it. It doesn't matter who the messenger is, if it's Trump, if it's TPUSA, if it's Fox News or CNN. It doesn't matter who's saying it as much as what they are saying. Now, sometimes messengers do precede themselves and develop a reputation. And so sometimes there's a benefit of the doubt or a lack of trust based on the messenger and what's happened in the past. But again, let's try to look more at the details and the merits of the argument. Quick break. We got a sponsor to talk about, and we'll be right back on the Coach Rob Show. Black Lion Hauling is a partner of the Coach Rob Show. Whether you need junk removal, gravel or mulch delivery, or a local furniture move in Middle Tennessee, Black Lion can handle it. They also have flatbed trailers available for rent that also do auto transport jobs across state lines. The Black Lion hallmark is showing up on time and good communication. That's just quality customer service, and that's why they have countless 5-star ratings on Facebook. Contact Andrew at info@blackliontn.com. Be sure to provide the promo code Coach Rob in the subject line. That email again is info@blackliontn.com. All right, welcome back to the Coach Rob Show. We're just talking a little bit about the difference in the messenger and the merits of the argument, or the principles behind, whether certain positions make actual sense or not. Okay, so let's look at the economy. Do we believe in open borders, or do we believe in closing the borders and immigration law? Okay, well, if you believe that, and that has a lot to do with the economy, it has a lot to do with crime and other things. But generally speaking, if you believe, and I think 90% of Americans would say, maybe not even 90, maybe 80% of Americans would say, yeah, there's a point to having a border. There's a point to not letting people just come across unvetted. There's a point to that. And there's also something to be investigated, which is another question. We kind of know, some of us know and admit the answer to this question, but the one real question that's a serious question is, why was the border wide open for 4 years, and why was the Biden administration lying about it? Why were they saying constantly the border's secure, the border's closed, it's secure, it's no problem, and then we say, well, we've got between 10 and 12 and maybe even as many as 20 million undocumented illegals that came across the border, and then we have case after case after case. We're talking in the 50 to 100 type homicide cases of American citizens being murdered, raped, abused, you name it, in terms of sexual and violent crime that has been committed by not only illegal immigrants that were unvetted and came across in the Biden administration, but also violent criminals who were across the border unvetted under the Biden administration. So, that's something that I think it's kind of important to dig into, is why was this allowed to happen? Was it strategic? Was it on purpose? Or was it just the result of an administration who just kind of was incompetent and just said, well, I don't really know how to and then they addressed it, like, as we got closer to the campaign season, and Biden said, yeah, we've really got to close the border, but I just, as the president, I just don't have the power to do that. Then Trump gets into office and boom, it's closed. So yeah, that's something that I don't know how you defend. But when you're talking about the messenger, it's not always as simple as, Bad Bunny said something that I didn't agree with at the Grammys, and so because of that, I'm gonna speak outrage and I'm gonna be offended by everything Bad Bunny does. I just don't believe in that. Now, by the same token, I'm a supporter of a lot of Trump's policies, probably most of them. I've actually been a fan of a lot of what Donald Trump has done. I actually like a lot of what Donald Trump says, and I like a lot about his style as well. However, it crosses the line for me to a point where I can't defend it all the time. And I thought that when he had a message and commented on Rob Reiner's death, I thought that was just tacky and classless. And I couldn't defend it. And I can't defend the thing that came out a week ago with, Barack and Michelle Obama being portrayed as monkeys. That's just not something that I can defend. It's just not something that's a good look. It's not something that's good at all. It's a bad thing. Whether Trump did it or a staffer did it, how it was done, why it fell through the cracks, or whatever explanation was there, to me, it just doesn't matter. It falls on Trump, and that's a failure on his part. Now, what do I think about the quarterback on my favorite football team? And this is hypothetical, because the quarterback of my favorite football team is Baker Mayfield, and this is not the case with Baker Mayfield. So this is hypothetical. Has nothing to do with Baker Mayfield or the Tampa Bay Bucks. But let's just say I have a football team, and the quarterback on my football team cheats on his wife. He's just a philanderer. He's got a bunch of different kids with a bunch of different women, and he's just an awful person when it comes to his commitments as a husband, as a father. He's a bad guy. Maybe he's an alcoholic. I don't know. Maybe he's got a lot of bad behaviors that I just can't defend and I don't like. There is a point that it could affect the way that he is playing quarterback for my team. But it's very possible that a lot of those personal failings will not affect him as the quarterback of my team. And it's very possible that he could be all of those things. He could have all of those personal failures and could still be an outstanding quarterback and play very well and throw the ball well and prepare well and read defenses well and even be a good leader in the locker room. It's possible that all those things could still be true. I'm not going to defend that quarterback if he is, or I'm not going to defend his behavior as a bad husband and unfaithful husband and father, but I'm still going to say he's my quarterback and this is my team. And I'm still going to say, you know what, I wish he didn't do that. I wish he got it together in his personal life. But in terms of what I need for my football team right now is I need a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over. I need a quarterback who can produce in clutch situations. I need a quarterback who prepares and takes his job seriously and has a desire to win and leads the team and wins. I want my team to win. Donald Trump is doing that. He is winning. And Donald Trump has got personal failures that bother me. But I'm not interested in being buddies with Donald Trump. I'm not interested in hanging out with him. I think he'd be a very interesting guy to hang out with for a little while. And I don't think that Donald Trump has, all the personal failings that a lot of people want to say that he does, because he's been such the object of slander because of political reasons. There's a lot of stuff about Donald Trump that just simply wasn't true. There's a big old list of close to 100 stories that were run for long periods of time, major campaigns that were run against Trump to sling dirt, and that were just not true. They were false. They were slander. But this is one of those things with Donald Trump that I can't defend. Just like the Rob Reiner death reaction. So, can't defend it, not going to defend it. Bad, not good. And I'm not going to just say, so what? Because it matters, but it doesn't matter as it relates to his job that he's doing as president. Is he a bad example? Yeah, you could make that point. This is a bad example. This is a bad example of leadership. You can say what you want about this failure. But to me, a cartoon on a social media post, as well as a social media post about the death of a Hollywood figure, actor and director, those aren't important as it relates to the policies and the job that I want this guy to do as president of the United States. What I think he should do about the economy, what he should do about law enforcement and crime, what he should do about keeping our country safe, and how he is handling the United States all over the world. I think that is something that is more important. And I don't think these failures on social media are going to negatively affect that. So, anyway, know the difference in just attacking the messenger versus when your messenger is your guy, but he fails, don't be afraid to admit it. I mean, that's the reality of it. So anyway, we'll be back. We've got a couple more things to get into before I talk about a few movies that I want to wrap up the show with. But right after this break, we will get back into a couple more things before the movie review. Thanks for being with us here on the Coach Rob Show. Linda Lane of the Lane Team and Benchmark Realty is a partner of the Coach Rob Show. Linda is an expert realtor who has 20 years experience as a licensed agent in the Middle Tennessee area. She is the perfect combination of expert experience and a delight to work with. Contact Linda at linda.lane@comcast.net. Be sure to put the promo code Coach Rob in the subject line. Linda's email is linda.lane@comcast.net. All right, welcome back to the Coach Rob Show. Diving into kind of a continuation from political policy and also just philosophy. This is kind of true about anything in life, though, I think. If you look at the philosophy of discipline versus the philosophy of indulgence, or the idea of I'm going to make myself fulfilled and happy in the long run versus I'm going to satisfy my immediate desires all the time. If you're somebody that lives, which I'm guilty of this, I have to admit this is a struggle for me, but there are some things that if you are somebody that you are always looking for instant gratification, you are always looking to satisfy desires of the moment, you choose not to live with any sort of discipline. Discipline is the idea of being able to tell yourself no. That is the whole concept behind the word discipline and being disciplined, is to being able to say, I'm not gonna quit on this workout. I'm not going to sleep in. I'm not going to eat as much as maybe I would like. I'm not going to allow myself to get off of this schedule, or I'm not going to allow deadlines to pass, or whatever it is. I'm going to say no to the desires of immediate gratification, whatever that is. Okay? So there are certain issues that have come up that as a society, what has happened, and I believe this is happening on the left. I believe this is happening on the Democrat side of the political aisle. What is happening on the left is they have been able to have some success with this. And that is, they have married the idea of instant gratification and no discipline with the idea of compassion. And what they have done is they have said, if you don't immediately satisfy your need for being a good person, then you are a monster. You are and then fill in the negative descriptor. You are a racist. You are a xenophobe. You are a homophobe. You are a bad person. And so this idea of, I want to be a good person, I want to show that I care about people, a lot of times that is the philosophical foundation behind political positions such as no immigrants are illegal. We live on stolen land. Legalize pot. DEI is about helping people. Spanking children is cruel. Putting people in prison for a long period of time is racist. Okay. And then you get into even dumber stuff like voter ID is racist, right? Anything we can attach to racism will do that, because what racism is the example. It is really more than any other word. It has been elevated to the example of what you don't want to be if you're a good person. If you are a racist, then you are a horrible person. And it doesn't matter if you're really a racist. It's just if you're called a racist. If people say you're a racist, then you're a horrible person. And it's been one of the ways that the left has been able to promote its agenda. And what's interesting now is what that leads to is you've got sort of this distinction at the beginning, right? You've got the political operatives that they understand all this. They understand that legalizing pot is going to result in some bad things. They understand that it's not stolen land because every land is either conquered or purchased. They understand that immigration law is valuable as a country and that immigrants can be illegal. But they're going to do things like redefine the words. And so you can't say illegal aliens, or you can't say homeless, and you can't say these words because they're so triggering and they're so mean, and you don't have compassion, because good people are compassionate people and bad people are mean and bad people are racist. And even if those mean, bad, racist people actually are standing for discipline and long-term health in the economy, or the autonomy and strength of our military and of the nation that protects people, or even if those mean, racist people are actually for policies that eliminates crime and makes people less likely to get murdered and robbed and raped, we're going to call them racist and bigots, and we're going to call them mean people that aren't compassionate. Because if we can manipulate them into thinking that, then we can win elections. Well, that's what Marxism is. That's what comes out of the Marxist philosophy. But what's interesting is that's not true. Those political operatives aren't actually necessarily Marxists. What they are is they're Democrats that want to win elections, and they're using Marxist strategies. But what happens when you use Marxist strategies for long enough is you start getting actual socialists, actual communists, actual Marxists who are at the top and starting to lead the parties. And so now you've got a mayor in New York that's a socialist, biggest city in the country. And guess what? You've got somebody running for mayor in Los Angeles now who's a socialist. We've got people popping up all over the country that are socialist, communist, Marxists, actually running for office, and they're gaining a little bit of traction because people are unwilling to look at these candidates' hypocrisies. They're unwilling to look at the hypocrisy of the candidate, and they're actually believing that in order to be a compassionate, good person, you have to support these people. What was the phrase Mamdani used after he won in New York? He said something about we're getting rid of the cold harshness of rugged individualism, and we are embracing the warmth of the collective. Well, I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh. And one of his favorite phrases, and thus one of my favorite phrases, is rugged individualism. Rugged individualism is what made this very young nation that we are a part of the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. Because rugged individualism and the ability to compete, the ability to achieve on one's own without the shackles of regulation and government intervention is why this country is great. So now we've got not so much a spectrum as much as like a clock, like a completely round circle. And so what we have is not so much a left and a right, but we're starting to come full circle, where we're coming from democracy, representative democracy, capitalism, to where we're starting to get into the socialism. We're starting to get into bigger government, more regulation, and eventually socialism and communism is coming out of Marxism, and eventually you get to fascism, which is so ironic because that's what the left loves to call Trump and the right, are authoritarian fascists, which is exactly the direction that the Democrat Party is sprinting toward. Okay, enough about philosophy. Let's get into movies after this next break. Thanks for being here.
People buy views, I know it's old news, but also bad news for everybody. People buy views, I know.
Interested in partnering with the Coach Rob Show as a sponsor? Friends of the show are certainly welcome. For a detailed proposal of opportunities, send a quick email with partner in the subject line to CoachDrewRob2025@gmail.com. Did you know that Coach Rob does movie reviews? Here he is, telling you what's worth watching.
All right, welcome back to the Coach Rob Show. We are in our final segment for the week, and I'm going to get into a few movies that I have watched in the last few weeks. And I've actually seen, let me see, these are movies that are at the theater or have been at the theater recently. So I'll go ahead and start back a little bit. Well, it's been this month, all this month. Let's just put it that way. So one movie that has been out for a little while is the Chris Pratt movie called Mercy. It's also got Rebecca Ferguson in it, and it's kind of an AI court system set up for law enforcement and the judicial system. I don't think it was done as well as it could have been. I kind of got the same feeling about this one that I felt about, maybe Judge Dredd or some of these, movies from the past that have been about the future. What was the other one? One of them was a Schwarzenegger movie, not Running Man, but I forget the name of the other one, but it was one of them that got remade, and it was very futuristic. So anyway, Mercy was just okay. Probably not gonna go crazy about that one, but it was not terrible. The next one was Shelter. This movie, Shelter, was a Jason Statham movie. I have to say, it was tremendous. This was a type of movie that I could get into because one of the things that I really like about movies is if I can admire and really appreciate some of the main characters. Not that they're not flawed. I understand the flaws of characters, but there are a lot of things, about character development that I think are really great. I think Chris Pratt, even though I like Chris Pratt a lot, I didn't love his character, and I didn't even necessarily love Chris Pratt in the role in that movie in Mercy. But Jason Statham has always got these characters that are just kind of mysterious, kind of like an Equalizer type character of Denzel Washington that I just love. There is a younger girl. I think she's maybe 12 or 13, something like that. Maybe she's a little bit older of a teenager, but he is sort of finds himself trying to protect this girl because her dad was like a military guy that he served with, and so he's just sort of on this mission of protecting this person against a lot of the bad powers that be. And he also is kind of which a lot of the Jason Statham movies, he's got this sort of isolation plan where he kind of goes somewhere where nobody can find him, off the grid, which I think that's really a cool concept. So anyway, I loved Shelter, would highly recommend it. It's an action movie, but it's not so dark or gruesome that my wife probably wouldn't like it. I think my wife would actually like the movie Shelter. Now Iron Lung is the next one. Iron Lung, I have to say, it was so weird and dark and unusual. It was based, from what I understand, on a video game. But this movie was very at times difficult to watch, and was just I don't know how to describe it. The plot of the movie is very strange. Most of the movie is actually in a tiny, basically like a tin can. He's kind of like in this little spaceship or submarine or something, and it's very claustrophobic. And it is. I was wondering if this movie was going to take some turn that had some cool ending, because so much of the movie you're just confused and it's just strange and dark and weird. But yeah, that is definitely a movie that I would not recommend. I did not enjoy it. It didn't get me to any conclusion that sort of explained things that I liked. And yeah, I think most people would hate this movie. I think some people could find some stuff in it. If I could read a little bit more about it, maybe I could understand it a little bit better. But Iron Lung, definitely would not recommend. And it was so weird. It was weird enough that it does make me want to do a little bit of reading on it. But anyway, would not recommend it. Not a very good movie. So Melania, the movie Melania, the movie about Donald Trump's wife, the First Lady. It was nice. It was fine. I learned a little bit about her. It felt a little bit like a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous sort of TV show. But it was basically, just fine. It was kind of what I expected, and it was okay. Islands is another one that was a little bit more like an independent. I'm not sure if it was an A24 film or not, but Islands is kind of a dramatic character development type movie. It was a show that I enjoyed. I thought it was well done. I thought it was interesting. It's about a tennis pro who struggles a little bit with alcoholism. He's on a sort of a tropical island. I think it's off the coast of Africa is where it is. So a lot of the people are, Europeans that visit there and so forth. And he kind of finds himself in a little bit of a missing person situation and a law enforcement kind of deal. So it was good. It was not great, but I liked it okay. The last three, Dracula, Solo Mio, and The Strangers Chapter 3. Strangers Chapter 3, if you're into The Strangers, I would recommend it. It was okay, pretty good. It kind of made me want to go back and watch the other two again. A lot of dark stuff. A lot was pertaining to the inner brains of serial killers. So it's pretty dark, but kind of cool and kind of interesting. Had kind of a cool element to the whole serial killer thing. Now Solo Mio, I will say, is probably like Shelter, one of the ones I would highly recommend. Really liked it. Kevin James was great. The whole story was great. This is an Angel Studios movie, and definitely need to get my wife or other female friends. I would recommend it to them. It's kind of a romantic comedy kind of show, but it's really good. Kevin James is great. Dracula, so many shows on Dracula and about vampires. This one just had a little bit of an interesting take. Christopher Waltz is in this movie, so he's kind of the big name out of this. The take on Dracula, the story was a little bit different from what I'd seen before, but still interesting, and maybe one of the better ones I've seen. When I think back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, I think about the Dracula movie that was on the ship when the bat was in the boat and that kind of thing. A lot of different takes on Dracula. I know we've got some movies coming up. There was the Netflix Frankenstein, which is nominated. Then there's another movie called The Bride that's coming up pretty soon. It's got some interesting actors in it, and looks like it's going to be pretty good. But this Dracula, I would probably say pretty good, not in the great category. So Solo Mio, Shelter, The Strangers Chapter 3, probably the best ones. Islands, Dracula, Melania, Mercy, all pretty good. And then as far as not recommend, have to put Iron Lung on that short list. So that's it for the movie reviews. That's it for the Coach Rob Show this week. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here.